Hey everyone, welcome back to 996. The Howl 20 games in the books. A quarter of the season has come and gone, and the Coyotes go 4-4-2, up from 3-6-1 from their first 10 games, and they stand at 7-10-3 at 28th in the league, about fifth last. Right now, there's Columbus, Chicago, Anaheim, and Ottawa below the Coyotes. I expect Ottawa to start picking it up sooner or later, and I think the tank battle will revolve around Columbus, Anaheim, Chicago, and the Coyotes. I did not expect Columbus to be this low. Getting Goudreau in the offseason should have raised them higher in the standings, but, we're not talking about the Blue Jackets here. Let's stick with the Coyotes. Let's go through the stats. I'm comparing these stats to the first 10 games they had this year. And just for fun, I had all the stats from the first 20 games of last season, so I just wanted to see how far the Coyotes have come, and they've come from a long, long ways. So we'll go to goals for per game. We'll start with that. It's about the same. It's down about zero point 0.1 goals, so barely anything. They stand at 26th in the league, 2.7 goals per game. Like I always say, you want it over 3 goals per game. If you're a playoff team, if you're an elite team, you need to be over 3 at least. Comparing from last season, they're at 1.85 for goals for per game. That's miserable. That's abysmal. I can't believe we had to watch that for 20 games. Thankfully, it got better as the season went on. I want to say these stretch of 10 games from the 10 game mark to the 20 game mark has been the best 10 game stretch since last season at the beginning of March of this year. They went on a 4 game win streak. They won 6 of 7 games. So it's been a while since we've seen a good stretch that the Coyotes have had. But after that, good 10 game stretch in early March, they went on a 6 game losing streak. So hopefully the same thing doesn't happen here. Goals against per game, way down, almost a full goal per game, which I love to see. It's still a bit high. They're 23rd in the league at 3.4 goals against per game. It was at 4.3, which is really high. There was a couple blowouts there, Boston, Pittsburgh, Ottawa in those first 10 games, and Dallas. But in these most recent 10 games, from game 10 to 20, no blowouts. Pretty remarkable. One of my expectations for the Coyotes to limit their blowout losses. And their most defeat in terms of deficits was only 2 4-1 losses, one to Vegas, one to the New York Rangers. I thought that Rangers game, the Coyotes played really well. Controlled most of the game, had so many more shots than the Rangers. I think Rangers has got the bounces going for them and ultimately won the game. The Vegas game, they were only down 1-0 going into the third period. Could have been anyone's game, but I think the Vegas Golden Knights were the better team in that game, and that was probably the Coyotes' weakest game in this 10 game stretch. So great to see that goals against has been down. That's mostly due to Karel Vejmelka, and I'm sure we'll talk about him a lot in this video. Special teams has been down. Like I said, these special team numbers they had in the first 10 games, 31% PP, 82% PK, they were unsustainable. They were really high considering the level of talent the Coyotes had. So they're coming back down to earth a little bit, which is bad, but thankfully their 5-on-5 play is starting to get a bit better, even though they're in the bottom of the league in terms of 5-on-5 stats. But yeah, their power play, it was third in the league in the first 10 games. Now it's dropped down to 12th in the league. Still at 23.2%. Still liking their power play. They did struggle recently. They went for an 0-12 stretch there. Now that they have Chikrin and Schmaltz back on the power play units, and then, Moser gets the PP2 time, and then we'll talk about Gunter Michelli, some head scratching there. But, I always knew these numbers and metrics would level out, but I love that they're both still above the league average of 16th place, 13th place for penalty killing. Pretty good. Yeah, I feel like the PK recently, maybe the past 6 games, they've been allowing like a power play goal almost every game, but I think one of the main issues with their special teams is they're taking way too many penalties. I can't find the metrics for penalties taken. Maybe I'm not looking hard enough, but I would love to see the metrics for the Coyotes, the amount of penalties they take, because it's pretty abnormal the amount of penalties they take, especially early in the game. I expect them to be bottom five in the league for sure, if not last in the league. And then saving percentage, 11th place in the league, pretty high, the highest we've seen since probably Darcy Kemper's days. .903, pretty good, way up from .884 in the first 10 games. And somehow the first 10 games of the season, the saving percentage was worse than the first 20 games of last season. So even with, Vejmelka just starting his NHL career, having Carter Hutton for 2 or 3 games, just getting Wedgwood for about 9 or 10 games there, it was still better than the first 10 games of this season. But like I said, there was a couple of blowouts, a few blowouts actually, that kind of, affected those numbers, over-indexed those numbers a little bit. But I think the Coyotes are good for a 900 save percentage. The fact that it's 11th in the league and they're just barely above 900 pretty much tells me goal scoring is really high, or that goalies aren't playing up stellar numbers as they used to, because 900 is like baseline what you should have. And the fact that it's 11th in the league for just barely above that is pretty remarkable there. Shooting percentage, still pretty high. 7th in the league in shooting percentage. It's down about a goal of 1 percentage point. So, more shots they're taking, less are going in by 1 percentage point. Coyotes are, their shooting percentage is remarkably high compared to other teams in the league. They don't get a volume of shots. They're about a 20 to 25 shot, well, it's right here, 24.3 shot per game team. So if they're averaging 2.7 goals per game, that's it. They need to get that shot per game number way high. Like, there's teams like Florida and Carolina where all they do is shoot the puck no matter what, whenever they get a chance. But, for the Coyotes, they don't have a lot of ozone time. So maybe that's why their shot totals are a bit low. But I would love to see them put the puck on the net way more, even though it's up a shot per game from the first 10 games. And that's probably due to Jacob Chikrin, even though he's only played 4 games. I swear, whenever this guy gets a puck, he's shooting it. He's not even thinking about passing. He's even beaver tailing his stick, like smacking his stick on the ice to get a pass so he can just shoot it on net. And there was a metric going around, I think in the Detroit game, where their shots by defensemen has increased by 2 or 3 shots per game. Just in those 4 games, Chikrin has been back in the lineup. So I expect the shots per game number to go higher, from 24.3. It is last in the league, 32nd place. So, they don't shoot a lot, but thankfully they score more often than not when they shoot the puck at 11%. So it's competitive, it's competent. If that shooting percentage was like below league average, which is 10%, maybe if that shooting percentage was 7% or 8%, they wouldn't be winning 7 games out of 20 games. So thankfully or not thankfully, it's due to their shooting percentage that they're winning games and being a competitive team in games. Face-off percentage, pretty miserable. We miss Jay Beagle and Alex Galchenyuk. I didn't even think I'd ever say that, but only in terms of face-offs do we miss them. Jay Beagle had a 57% face-off percentage last season for the Coyotes. Galchenyuk had a 52% face-off percentage. Right now, it's Barrett Hayton leading the way with 52.6%, and then everyone else is below 50%. Bukestad's got really bad face-off numbers. That's bringing down the average a lot. I think it's around 45%. So, even though Hayden is not getting on the score sheet, only 3 assists in 20 games, no goals. But his face-off numbers are the best on the team. Pretty much our only reliable face-off man, which is pretty crazy to think about, as Barrett Hayton we're leaning on for his face-offs. But yeah, it's really low. It's down from the first 10 games of the season. We'll have to see it be picked back up. They're 29th in the league in face-offs. That's got to be better. I'm pretty sure that was one of my expectations going into this season. And finally, fights. They're 7th in the league in fights. They have 7 fights in total. They had 4 fights from games 10 to 20, up from 3 fights from games 1 to 10. So they're fighting. O'Brien's obviously our fighter, but McBain had a fight. A couple other people have gotten fights. I didn't really check who was fighting, but it seems like O'Brien is our main fighter, which is why he's in the lineup reluctantly. But, that's his job. That's what he's paid to do. And that's why he's in the lineup, to be an enforcer. But it's great that it's rubbing off to other guys like McBain, who, he had a huge fight and a great fight against Detroit. I believe there was another fight recently, Josh Brown, who just pummeled the opposition. I forget which game it was, but that was a game where he did get injured from that hit. But immediately after that hit, went and fought the guy and just pummeled him. One of the best Coyotes fights I've seen in a lot of years. So they're keeping it up. They did have 11 fights in the first 20 games last season. It felt like last season all the Coyotes were doing was fighting instead of winning games. Last season, I forget what their record was, but probably only I'm pretty sure it was 4 wins. Pretty sure it was 4-14 and something or another. 4-14-2. I did write it down. So last year, 4-14-2. Obviously, they started to get some wins after they won their first game after the first 11 games of this season. So yeah, some numbers are good, some are bad. I'm loving the saving percentage increasing by a lot. Goals for I hope it stays around 2.7 to 3. I don't want it creeping down to 2.5. Goals against, hopefully it keeps going down. The special teams, I expect the special teams to round out about probably 17th, 16th in the league. Maybe that PP goes down to about 20%. I just don't think the Coyotes are an amazing team to have crazy special team numbers. I would love if they got back to, 82% on the PK, but they're for sure never touching 30% PP again. It was just an anomaly, first 10 games. A lot of these statistics are over-indexed one way or another. But I would hope the PK increases. It's a bit down. But, if they continue to take one of the most penalty-taking teams in the league, if they continue to take a lot of penalties, I just don't think they have the PK units there to kill off all those penalties. Sooner or later, just like we're seeing right now in this trend, they're getting a power play goal against almost every game. Just limit the penalties, and then maybe that PK number will get back to around 80%. But, I'm pretty happy with most of these metrics. Obviously, the face-offs need to be higher. But I don't think I'm pretty disappointed in any other metric. I want them to shoot more, but it has been increasing by a shot per game from the first 10 games. Like I said, with Chikrin back in the lineup, they're going to start getting more shots on net and generate some more chances. So I've been loving the last 10 games. No blowouts, which is great to see. Every game was entertaining. Every game was competitive. Like I said, there was no real game where they were just out of the water and outmatched. Maybe parts of games like Minnesota for the first 2 periods, I thought the Coyotes had no juice. But, they were down 4-1 and they made it interesting in the end, making it a 4-3 game. So they got fight in them. They're not giving up on games. They're not getting run over. There's been so many games against Minnesota recently where the Coyotes just get dominated, especially Rick Tockett's last season, where every game where you saw Minnesota on the calendar, on the schedule, you just close your eyes. It was like a 7-1 loss. It was just embarrassing. Minnesota, Vegas, and the Avalanche in that season. Those were embarrassing games. This year, haven't had an embarrassing game since game number 10, their last home game. So hopefully that didn't leave a sour taste in people's mouths going to that game. They got 4 more games on this road trip. I want to mention all 10 games were on the road. So that's pretty remarkable as well. They're still on their 14-game road trip. Like I said, 4 more games left. LA and then Western Canada. So they haven't had a lot of success recently in Western Canada. I'm talking about last season. I think one game against Calgary was like 9-1 loss. So hopefully those are competitive games. I'm expecting the LA game to be really close and heated. I'm excited to watch that game. Maybe not excited to watch the Edmonton and Calgary game. But you never know. Maybe this is a new Coyotes team where, for all 14 games of the road trip, they're all competitive. They're all close games, and Coyotes have a chance in each and every single one of them to win the game. So that would be crazy. That would be unexpected. I expected this road trip to go way worse as opposed to going 4-4-2. So let's get into the player statistics. Obviously, the Golden Boy is up top, a point per game, 21 points in 20 games. Levin Keller, he just seems to get on the score sheet almost every game. Against the Detroit game, he looked amazing. He was out there dangling, speedster, making plays. You could always rely on Keller to show up for a game, show off his skill, make good plays. It seems like every time this guy's touching the puck, he's making a great play. I love how he gains the offensive zone, stops up, looks for the open man, makes a great play, the unexpected play that other teams aren't expecting. And now with Schmaltz in the lineup, Schmaltz has 4 points in his last 4 games since returning. I think Schmaltz has 3 goals, maybe 2 goals or 3 goals. He's on fire. I'm loving how the chemistry with Keller and Schmaltz, it just fits like a glove. Like, they got chemistry ever since Schmaltz came to Arizona, and they don't miss a beat under Andre Tourigny. And hopefully Schmaltz, he is a point per game player since coming back. He's got to maintain that pace. He's looking good, doesn't look tired, doesn't look, checked out like he did in those Rick Tocchet years. So hopefully with Keller, continuing his dominance since Andre Tourigny has arrived on the scene, it gets Schmaltz to that point per game level as well. And they just continue to just dominate whenever they're on the ice. Gostisbehere, surprisingly, still second place on the team. He's been really quiet since they left Tempe in that homestand. 4 goals, 10 assists, 14 points in 20 games. Like I said, he's been a bit disappointing recently. Now with Chychrun back in the lineup, Chychrun's got 3 points in 4 games. So maybe Gostisbehere's point totals start to decrease as his ice time starts to decrease. Maybe he's jaded and conflicted that Chychrun's now the new Golden Boy. I said that twice now on the defensive pairings, but I know what the organization and coaching staff's trying to do. They got to up the trade value of Chychrun. They got to get him into a lot of situations. They got to play him over 23 minutes a game. He's got to take a lot of shots. He's got to score some goals, and he's doing all that already in 4 games. This was, a bit of a concerning situation with Chychrun coming back. I had a fearful thought that Chychrun would come back and his trade value would just dive down and be worthless. I knew that would be a low probability, but that was a fear of mine that he didn't really, overcome this injury. These injuries are taking a toll on him. Maybe he's not as explosive or talented or noticeable, but that's been not the case at all. Immediately, he's making an impact. He's noticeable out there. Already our best defenseman. He's taking a shot whenever he can. He scored a goal. He's producing, making an impact. He's being physical. He had a huge hit on Reeves against Minnesota. So he's engaged. He looks like he never missed a beat. Whatever the coaching staff is doing with these injured players, like Keller, he didn't play in preseason, didn't really participate too much in high competitive training camp. He did participate, but he wasn't wearing a contact jersey sometimes. But Keller immediately thrown into the regular season, already a point per game. Schmaltz, first game back, first 4 games back, 4 points in 4 games. So these players are coming back from the already, hitting the runway running and not missing a beat, making an impact, and being the players they're touted to be. Moving on, love to see JJ here in the top 5 point getters for the Coyotes. 3 goals, 10 points, 13 10 assists, sorry, 13 points in 20 games. He's loving the power play time. He's loving playing with Keller and Schmaltz whenever he's out there. He had a big goal against Minnesota. Maybe for me, I would love him to shoot more. That's what he was doing last season when he got called up from the Roadrunners. Whatever chance he had, he was just throwing the puck on net. We'll have to see more of that. But loving Moser. I think, the emergence of Moser is going to make the departure of Chychrun more palatable and digestible. I love Moser. I think he's going to be the Chychrun replacement. Not as good, obviously. Chychrun is approaching elite levels of defense and defensive production, but he's a good replacement and really reliable defensively. I love the way he breaks up plays in the defensive zone, and he doesn't look out of place in the offensive zone at all. So hopefully he just takes more steps forward and becomes a top pairing D-man for the Coyotes if he's not already. But I think Chychrun and Gostisbehere are the top 2 D-men right now for the Coyotes. And then we have Michelli. He's got 13 points in 18 games. The only one on here who hasn't played every game. 1 goal, 12 assists. I guess he's making all the passes to Krause, where Krause has a team leading 10 goals and only 2 assists. So bit of opposites there. Michelli is always feeding Lawson Krause. The problem I've been having recently is that Michelli and Guenther are rotating healthy scratches. And then I look at the roster, and I'm like, why is Kassian, Ritchie, O'Brien, and Fisher all playing on the same night? Like, I know O'Brien's got a niche. He fills a role. He's the enforcer. He's getting that tempo and mojo and laying big hits, which the home crowd likes to see. And it gets the Coyotes engaged in the game if they're not being engaged on the shot clock or on the game sheet or scoring sheet. But, for me, Kassian, he's a worst Coyotes player on the team. I know he was injured. He came back from injury, but I don't see him making good plays. I don't see him having an impact. He's playing with Hayden and Ritchie. It's like, why are we just scratching Kassian and putting Guenther or Michelli with Hayden and Ritchie? Like, give that third line some more offensive oomph and more just, have an impact on the game more offensively, as opposed to Hayden, Kassian, and Ritchie. It's just not doing it for me. Maybe that's a reason why Hayden hasn't scored all year. But when you see Hayden on the power play, even though he's not getting assists on those power play goals, almost every power play goal, you just see Hayden in front of the net, causing havoc, causing a scene, and these pucks are going in. So I would like to see Guenther go in, Kassian out, have Guenther, Hayden, Ritchie, roll that line for 5 games, see if there's any chemistry there. I know Michelli, Krause, and Bukestad have chemistry, so I'm not saying put Michelli with Hayden and Ritchie, because Michelli's already got chemistry with Krause and Bukestad. So I love to see Guenther, be in the lineup more. It seems like since he's made the team, he hasn't had a big impact. He's got a couple points here and there. I believe he's 6th or 7th on the team in terms of points. But yeah, I don't like how they're rotating the rookies. Maybe it is load management. Maybe because they're on this long road trip, these young guys need a bit of a break. Maybe there's not a lot of practice time to fix and look at the details of their game. But would love to see Guenther and Michelli in the lineup together. Sit Kassian out. I know Kassian's an NHL guy. I know he's making a lot of money. He just reminds me way too much of those anchor players like Eriksson and Galchenyuk and Andrew Ladd of last year, where they just do nothing all game. They're just there. They're dressed because they're NHL players, and it will look bad if they're scratched because they're getting paid millions and millions of dollars. But come on, Kassian. He doesn't deserve to be in the lineup more than Guenther. Maybe the coaching staff wants to teach these young guys something, but Michelli's close to the top in rookie scoring, if not at the top. So you got to reward him. Keep throwing him in the lineup. I feel like Michelli's outplaying Guenther. So, no way Michelli should be scratched. Guenther, I could see a case, an argument that he could be scratched. He needs to work on some things, but would rather him in the lineup than Kassian. Krause, no one expected him to be the leading goal scorer for the Coyotes. He's making that new contract money, $4.3 million for 5 years. Some people thought it was an overpayment. He's already at 10 goals in a quarter this season. That's a 40-goal pace. He's not going to reach 40 goals, obviously, but loving him, loving that he's taking more shots. He's got great chemistry with his line mates. I'm just happy for him. I'm happy that he's meeting the expectations of that contract, because the first, 5, 6, 8 games of the season, he wasn't really producing and making an impact, but now he is. And now he's, one of the top players for the Coyotes. So keep it rolling. Maybe bring that goal scoring touch at home. And hopefully he gets another 20 goal a year. And then for the goalies, I think Ingram may have the worst maybe the best goalie with the worst numbers I've seen. I didn't know his numbers were this bad. I'll jump to Ingram first. 1-5-1, an 882 save percentage, and a 4.02 goals against average. Yeah, I think Ingram is playing better than those numbers. Maybe he's just not facing a lot of shots and it's skewing these numbers. It's also only 7 games he's played, so like I said, with the 10-game mark, it's such a low number of games where statistics are all out of whack. But I think Ingram is a good backup. I'm happy he's on the team. I'm comfortable when he's named to be the starter of the game they're about to play. I think he's got a lot of upside. I think his numbers are going to improve, and hopefully he keeps it rolling. For sure, he needs to increase these stats, because if the Coyotes want to trade him at the deadline, these numbers, that's getting a 4th or 5th round pick at best. We traded Wedgwood for a 3rd round pick, but Wedgwood had great numbers, good numbers for being on such a bad team last year. But for Ingram, these are just plain and simple bad numbers, but he looks good. So I think these numbers will be way better once we do the 30-game and 40-game progress report. And then Vamelka, 6-5-2, 916 save percentage. That's like top 10 in the league, if not top 5. I didn't check that. And then a 297 goals against average. That's a bit high. That's not elite. But, a 915 save percentage is approaching an elite goaltender status. He's one of the top goalies in expected goals saved percentage, 5-on-5. He's playing remarkable, even on this long road trip. Every game he's in, he looks amazing. I think it's due to the fact that they're resting him a lot. Last season, he played 70 games. He barely got nights off. Sometimes he was playing back-to-back games. I just feel like he needs rest. He needs load management. Ingram is a good backup to support that. And he's looking amazing. He's looking like, if this team ever does get better and get way more talent and competes for a playoff spot next season or the year after, the league is going to know this name. I know some teams know him already because he's a brick wall sometimes, unexpectedly against good teams, but I think he'll be a league-known name like Sorokin and Shesterkin if this team was just better. But because, this season, he's stellar. He looks awesome. Rarely looks like Swiss cheese out there. So that's it. It's been a good 10 games. Hopefully they keep it rolling. I can't wait for this team to come back home in Tempe, and they have a huge number of home games. So let's keep it rolling. Liking most of these metrics here. And we'll see what happens with Chychrun. Maybe he gets traded in the next 10 games. Maybe it happens later near the trade deadline. But I'm hoping this December month will be good, just like it was for November. And we'll see from there. So thank you for watching. If you like what you see, spread the word. And as always, thank you for your support.